Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So I just want to welcome you all. Thank you for coming, especially my esteemed godbrothers and my real brother also, Judge Brown, and his good wife, Alice. Thank you for coming, and I know for many of you it's a long trip, but I don't feel qualified to receive you properly, and I think I should start by apologizing that for many of you I've been a big god brother, and for my own brother I've also been a big brother. So you know how big brothers sometimes tend to be a little bit overbearing. So if I've been anyway overbearing to any of you, I know with my younger brother I was when we were children, and I'm sure with many of you, but please forgive me for that nature of mine. Actually, we say that the son gets the quality from the mother. So my mother was like that, you know. I remember she told how she never understood why America didn't fight the Russians right away as soon as the World War II was over, because they went into Poland. You know, we were Catholics, and she said, Polish Catholic Poland, it was given to the communists. We should have fought. So that was kind of her nature, so I guess I got that nature too. So forgive me if I'm too rough with any of you. Otherwise, again, thank you for coming, and as you see in the photos, whatever quality I have is by my mercy of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who very kindly opened our eyes with the torchlight of knowledge and gave us a little insight into who we actually are. How we're not this body, but we're the soul. So we'll have a chance to talk philosophy later, but now I think the next program. Okay. Thanks again for coming.
Being a center in which the devotees could gather around that allowed this temple to develop. I know there are development plans here for the future, but all of them will be based on your work here, Maharaj, and we'd like to thank you very much for that. I've also had the opportunity to serve with His Holiness Trivikrama Swami in different places, and when I think about it, it was 30 years ago, which is quite an amazing amount of time, when we were together in the nation's capital area. Trivikrama Swami came and he became the chaplain at the University of Maryland there, and so he was preaching there, and I gave him my best man to be with him, poor Shea Das over there, a brahmachari from the temple in Potomac, and I was happy to be able to assist him in that way. But it just shows you how quickly time passes. As I said, when I think the 30 years has passed since that time when we were there together, it just amazes me. But when we were in Kirtan and I see Trivikrama Maharaj dancing, I can't imagine that it was actually 30 years, because I don't think he ages like the rest of us, although we may be celebrating his 70th birthday today. Just one final thing, and I think maybe Maharaj might remember, but he did tell me about his brother. We were back there in those days in the nation's capital. He told me about his brother, that his brother was a lawyer, and so I'm happy to meet you, sir, after all these years.
Nice to be here.
So let me just say 2 words to you, Maharaj. Thank you so much for your service to Srila Prabhupada and your helping us here in Orlando. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatruvascha kripa sindhubhyavata patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So we were singing a song during the gift-giving part of the ceremony that Oh Hey Vaishnav Thakur. Just like to read the translation of that song real quick. O Vaishnav Thakur, O Ocean of Mercy, be merciful to me, your servant, and purify me by the shade of your lotus feet. Your feet I humbly hold. Controlling my 6 urges and purifying me of the 6 faults, please give to your servant the 6 good qualities. O give me the 6 kinds of holy association. I have sat down here in hope of having your company. Alone I can find no strength to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. I beg you therefore, please be merciful, and with a particle of faith, give me the great treasure of the holy name of Krishna. Krishna is yours. You are able to give him to me, for such is your power. I am indeed wretched and simply run after you, crying Krishna, Krishna. So it's funny, as I was reading that translation, I'm thinking that, this is how, in this case, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is appreciating devotees. Vaishnavas. Vaishnav is one who worships Krishna. That's a devotee. We say, Vancha kalpatrubhyascha kripasindubhyavicha. We offer our obeisances to devotees. But as you read the translation, you're thinking he's making all these requests, actually. Give me your mercy, show me the path. I'm simply running after you, trying to get Krishna. He's actually making so many requests. But this is the way, because we just want the qualities that we see in devotees. For example, Trivikrama Swami Maharaj exemplifies sadhana. Sadhana by always been strictly, probably as Shesha Prabhu said, he's the one of the oldest sannyasis, meaning haven't been sannyasi for the longest time, and steadily being a sannyasi, you'd never even have a thought that Trivikrama Swami is not a sannyasi. Lives an impeccable lifestyle as a sannyasi. So in the Western culture, we express gratitude by thanking. We thank people for things that they do. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank Maharaj for being such a wonderful example of a Vaishnava, of a sadhaka, of one who follows the orders of his spiritual master and appreciates the gift that his spiritual master has given to all of him and to all of us. So thank you very much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Trivikrama Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Maharaj, there's many ways I'd like to thank you, but there's two particular things I would like to mention today. First, as Vatsal said, and I would also like to thank you for being such a serious and dedicated and sincere disciple of Srila Prabhupada. By doing so, you're a great example to all of us. Also, as Vatsal said, you're a great example of a sannyasi. Many of us are grihastas, we live with family, we live alone and in different situations. But when we have your association, you're always reminding us of the way we should live. That we do everything and to please Srila Prabhupada and dedicate our lives to serving Lord Krishna. So thank you for putting Srila Prabhupada in the foreground. And I remember hearing how Shyamasundar Prabhu, he told the story of how he was in London and he went to Srila Prabhupada and asked him, Srila Prabhupada, what does it mean to be a good disciple? And he was expecting some very complicated philosophical description from Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada simply said, being good disciple means to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. So thank you for following Prabhupada's instructions to a T, and in this way enlivening us all so much. Also, on a personal note, as you well know, recently I had a traumatic experience in my life, and a potentially life-altering experience. And when that happened, you were one of the very, very first to call me and encourage me to not lose heart and to think of Krishna through the whole thing. And you reminded me that nothing happens without Krishna's will. And when anything bad happens, there's always a silver lining on the other side. So that meant a tremendous amount to me, and it helped me very, very much. And for that I thank you very, very sincerely. Trivikrama Maharaj ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nidivishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Tarane. So I remember, I believe it was 1971 when I was at Bhakta at Rath Yatra in San Francisco. I was 70 or 71, and Maharaj was there, and his kirtan, or his dancing in ecstasy, his chanting with the hand cymbals, was very enlivening to me, very inspirational. Then recently, then later on in 73, 74, 75, 76, in India, actually I was there with my godbrother Bahushara Prabhu for many of those years, who's sitting on the far left here. And we were always traveling together, but I always remember Trivikrama Maharaj as although he says he apologized for lording over, but actually there was 2 or 3 other sannyasis that I remember that used to bother him. They were very, I don't want to mention any names, but there were some real heavy dudes that were much heavier than him, and Maharaj was always very humble. Although he was a strong Navy guy, he would take the sauce from those guys. And I and Bahushra, we always felt sorry for that, and a couple other of us. We always felt like, come on, why are they giving this humble and kirtan, ecstatic, and wonderful personality such a hard time all the time? Anyways, so I just wanted to share that with you because it always bothered me, actually. I guess that's why. It still does, actually. But anyways, later on, 30 years later, you could say, more recently, in 2008, I traveled with my wife Tulsi, his disciple, to Belarus. And Maharaj comes to Belarus, instead of going to Vrindavan or Mayapur for a spiritual, you could say, rejuvenation or vacation, he comes to Belarus and Ukraine, and it was an amazing experience. The devotees there, when Maharaj comes, chant and dance for 6 hours non-stop. I mean, here's a man, 70 years of age, dancing in ecstasy, jumping up and down, and running around, for 6 hours, hello. So, always very inspired by his, and this is evidence, this health and this evidence and this determination and this enthusiasm is all evidence of his being this first-rate, effulgent sannyasi, the oldest sannyasi in good standing of this type of character in the movement, period. So, anyway, with that, Hare Krishna.
Jai Hare Krishna, Hari Bol Maharaj Jai. Very glad to be here. And I'd like to say that Maharaj, first time, as Abhi was saying, we met him in India and preaching, and Maharaj later on was starting a center in Chandigarh, and in Chandigarh, India, in Punjab state. And then again later on, I came to the States, and then also Maharaj came to the States. And Maharaj was very interested in creating an alternative in those early years in the 80s, an alternative area where devotees could go if any of the godbrothers felt frustrated, godbrothers, godsisters, in the San Francisco area. It was with the Treya Rishi, Trivikrama Maharaj, Bhakti Sri Damodar Maharaj, and there was others too, and Navayovana. And so Maharaj was there all that time. Now, then when I had heard that Maharaj was there as temple president, sannyasi temple president. And the thing is that I also wanted to go there, so I came. I'm from LA. I came on up. This was like 1983. And so then at that time also I wanted to get married. I was going to change my ashram from brahmachari to grihastha. And at that time, my future wife, Lila Shakti here, she was actually becoming interested again in Krishna consciousness. But she had her husband, well, they got divorced, but her husband, he was antagonistic. And so Maharaj was giving shelter there at the temple to her, to encourage her in her Krishna consciousness. So the thing is, I'm grateful to Maharaj for encouraging her, keeping her, giving her shelter from her mean husband. And the thing is, well, ex-husband, not me, ex-husband. So this also gave the opportunity for me to also meet her, because she was coming to the temple, doing service, cleaning, and so many things like she likes to clean. And in this way, Maharaj gave the example, and I stayed there. And I didn't plan really on going anywhere. So then I stayed there for all the time, and then finally Maharaj also, he went traveling again and preaching. So I want to thank Maharaj for that very much. He created a base and a foundation. And also he gave initiation to my wife, because he wasn't initiating in that early years. He started in 1988. So Srimati Radhika Devidasi was the first disciple. My wife Lila Shakti is the second disciple. And I was there, we were all there. She got initiation, and she got second initiation from him also. And so I just like to thank you, Maharaj, thank you very much for being a steady sannyasi. And he's here, you can see him, and he's always been preaching. And not only that, one thing that I really admire about him is that he stayed dedicated 100% to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada. So that's an important factor, because no wavering, just steadfast in staying dedicated to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Trivikrama Maharaj ki jai.
Om Gyanatimmirandasya Gyananjana Shakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. 1977, just before Srila Prabhupada passed away, Trivikrama Maharaj was walking around the Vrindavan temple, and he was looking for somebody to do the night guarding service for Srila Prabhupada. And I had just come 1 year before, but he couldn't find anybody. But when I had been looking for some other to do personal service to Srila Prabhupada, and when I found out he was looking for somebody, he couldn't find anybody, I was very happy that when he said, can I have the service? He said, yes, happily you can have it. So I'm very grateful, because I was able to be with Srila Prabhupada the last 2 weeks of his life every night. And since ever then, Trivikrama Maharaj has always encouraged me in spiritual life. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Namo Krishna Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vicharani Nirvisesa Sanyavadi Pasta today's term. Due to the mercy that I'm so close to my beloved godbrother Bahusha and my loving friend Lila Shakti, I've gotten a lot of mercy with Trivikrama Maharaj. He's come to my home and stayed there, and he's transformed it. We built a room downstairs, and he stayed for a while. And when we were in the temple room at Mangalarti, I remembered being with Leela and her daughter, and us dancing just with Maharaj, and trying to keep up with all the different tunes. He's the only one that he just knows so many tunes, and he has such a taste for chanting, and I aspire for that. And you don't know how much strength it resonates in us when we're able to see such a sincere devotee stay strong. And every time I put my tilak on and I always think of you. And when you were there, you don't like wearing your garlands so much, and you would throw them to the goats. I have 2 goats. And when you finish your prasadam, you asked my husband, Dr. David, if you could give the remnants to the goats, and he told me. I said, well, what about me? What about me? And now every night when I'm feeding the goats, I goes, well, you're special souls. I'll never get rid of you. Something you did in your other lives to get such mercy. And this morning when I was on the altar, I felt like I was back in Winnipeg with Shivaram Maharaj dressed in Gaurni tie, and it was so blissful and just so honored to be here. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Here, give this to them.
Thank you, Mark. I first met Maharaj in the spring of 1978 in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, at a program at the home of one Bhakta Scott, a devotee a student at Bucknell University. He's now our Shastra Das, a big Vaishya who gives money freely to so many sannyasis.
What's his address?
Yeah, give you his number. And I was a new devotee then. I had a very strong impression getting Maharaj's association in Kirtan, and he gave the lecture at that program. Staunch sannyasi. And I used to see him on and off during the years at different times and places. He came to Philadelphia a few times in the 80s. I remember one time in 1991, in January, I used to stay in Miami during the winter and do Harinam downtown. Maharaj came and we were having kirtan, and he goes, oh, you should come to Poland with me and play the mridanga in Poland. And I said, what's the weather like in Poland this time of year? I said, are the skies gray and it's very cold and you never see the sun? He goes, how did you know? So I didn't go with him to Poland at that time. Later, I used to also see him coming sometimes to Dallas when I was living there. He had one disciple there, Dr. Radhika, the chiropractor. And then I started coming here to Orlando, the big civilization of Orlando, coming from the hinterlands of Alachua to make a few bucks, do a little collection. I always stay with Maharaj. And sometimes he would chastise me for different things. And sometimes I thought he was chastising me. I didn't do anything. Why is he chastising me? And then I heard Jayadvaita Swami tell a story about one time he was in Bombay and Srila Prabhupada chastised him for something. But it was something that he hadn't done. It was someone else had done it. And instead of protesting, he thought, well, this is Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Let me just take this chastisement humbly. Take it as Krishna's mercy and not defend myself and fight back. So I actually learned this from Trivikrama Maharaj because he likes to
See what a good teacher I am?
sometimes chastise a little bit. And then I learned to appreciate that and relish it. And so sometimes when I'd be getting ready to come down to Orlando for the weekend, I think, oh good, now I get to go see Trivikrama Maharaj. I wonder what he's going to chastise me for this time. I can't wait. He chastised me when he got married, and then after I got divorced, he chastised me for that too. But the relationship has always been very sweet, and Maharaj has always said to me, you're always welcome. And I would come and stay with him in his house, and he always made me feel very welcome. And I always found his association, and still do, extremely inspiring in my own Krishna consciousness. Like the Rock of Gibraltar. So thank you very much, Maharaj.
Panchakalpaduruvishya Kripsminivacha Patitanam Bhagavyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Jai Trivikrama Maharaj. Congratulations on being Krishna's representative for pretty much every one of us in some significant way or another.
Can't hear it.
Oh, okay. So I just said that I want to thank Trivikrama Maharaj for being in one way or another
significant representative of Krishna for us. And when I talk about what I mean by a representative of Krishna, I mean somebody who reminds us of Krishna. He has some, in particular, my experience with Maharaj is that he has an attachment. He has a relish for actually hearing and speaking about Krishna. To recount my experience with this, I've only met Maharaj 3 times in person. Most of our Sangha has been over the phone or through correspondence, and that's the internet these days. Everything's virtual, so to speak. And because professionally I'm also in the information technology sector, sometimes I tend to think of the world in terms of this virtual reality that we sometimes call the internet. So, going back, I can't exactly remember the first time we met. I think it was 2007, 2006, like that. And one of the things that immediately struck me about Maharaj is that he's just enthusiastic to talk about Krishna. That he's always chanting Krishna's names on his japa, or kirtan, or reading. Just, being in the ashram with him, you sit down and let's read something about Krishna. Let's do something about Krishna. It's always something connected to Krishna. And then you realize that he's very much attached to that. And that for those of us who are aspiring to also become, as we say, Krishna conscious, we realize how difficult that is to achieve. And so, and so another time, I met him. He was just telling me about how, actually he came here and he was saying that I was coming here and I was by myself and I try not to be by myself, but I had to be, and so I'm just, I figured out how to just by myself chant my rounds, do my reading. Of course, he's been doing that his whole life and he's being humble, but I was just struck by that just being self-sufficient in his attachment to Krishna, that's a very, very rare thing. Now, the effect on me is that it's been a help to my Krishna consciousness. It's like this. There was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada's guru, once spoke about Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, and how he said that before he met Gaur Kishore, that he used to think of the Bhagavatam and the stories in the Bhagavatam and the mental states the devotees had in thinking of Krishna to be fiction. It was, they were eulogy, but exaggerations. But then he said, after I saw Gaur Kishore, that I could realize immediately, I could realize that what was described in the Bhagavatam was not fiction, it was fact. And therefore, it was by his mercy that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that he could devote his life 100% to Krishna. So the same way, these devotees like Maharaj Trivikrama, who have this attachment to Krishna, that without their mercy, without their blessings and their association, that it's practically impossible to actually advance in the science of bhakti yoga. You can't advance without it. And so therefore, one of our scriptures, called the Nectar of Instruction, it is said in there, Shushrusaya bhajana vidyamananyamanya nindari shunya ridamipsita sangaladya, that one should associate with and faithfully serve that person who is advanced in undeviated devotional service and whose heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. So at a certain point in my association, my brief association with Maharaj, I could see that here was a person who was just doing undeviated devotional service. And hence it was only in my best interest to somehow or other maintain a relationship with him and do some service for him. And of course, my service has been deficient, but I've always tried to take advantage of his counsel and guidance whenever I've had to, there's been some issue in my life, or there's something I'm writing about. Trivikrama Maharaj is always one of the advisors. And the part about not only doing undeviated devotional service, but having a heart that's devoid of the propensity to criticize others, that's also Trivikrama Maharaj. Whatever he's doing, he's always, Krishna is always there for him. And therefore, how can, he just doesn't see others as being critical towards him, or the need to criticize others. There's no tinge of that in his character. So, the occasion of his 70th birthday, his Vyasa Puja, it is both a great achievement, and it's also a reminder that as these devotees like Maharaj are advancing in their lives and years, that they're not going to be around much longer for us to take advantage of. So I would like to close my offering with this one very humble request that Maharaj please somehow or other find some engagement and give us some your association before you move on. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Bol.
Hare Bol.